For NYup and Syracuse.com, I am Matt Parrino, joined by Ryan Talbot, and we have just about wrapped up day one of the legal tampering period. Free agency officially will start on Wednesday, but the Buffalo Bills very active on day one here. The big splashy signing, Mitch Morse, center, former Kansas City Chief, seems to have come to an agreement to play for the Buffalo Bills for the next 4 seasons. Ryan, this was the top position of need. We've talked about it over and over again. A lot of people kind of had Matt Paradise as that number one center. Some people had Mitch Morse. What's your first thoughts on the signing?
Well, I think Bills fans should be ecstatic. I mean, right, like you said, I think many of them were saying, okay, they have to either get Matt Paradis or they have to go out and get Mitch Morse. And for a while, you had heard reports out there that the Bills and the Jets are both bidding for Paradis. And then all of a sudden, there was the announcement that the Bills had agreed to terms with Mitch Morse. 4 years, $11 million on average per year, which was to be expected after what you saw Pouncey get in Pittsburgh last week, or a few days ago, not even 1 week ago. So nothing too unexpected there, but you get that veteran leadership at center. You get a guy who, is just coming off of a season where he worked with a second-year quarterback and helped Patrick Mahomes do wonders. Now, mind you, Mahomes obviously did a lot of that on his own with his arm and with his ability to read defenses, but Morse deserves some credit, too, for allowing him to come right into the lineup and transition so smoothly in that role. So I think this is a great signing for the Bills, and I think it's an even better signing for Josh Allen.
100%. And, you talk about the strengths of Mitch Morse's game, and it's the pass blocking. I mean, this guy hasn't given up a sack since 2016. One of the premier pass blocking offensive linemen in the NFL. And, when you're building an offense around a franchise quarterback, a young quarterback like Josh Allen, listen, Ryan Groy and Russell Bodine, 10 starts for Bodine, 6 for Groy. They didn't give up any sacks last year either, but they both gave up 16 hurries of Josh Allen. Last season, Mitch Morse only gave up 3. This guy he comes with, that package of, A, you're going to get a guy that has experience winning. B, you're going to get a guy that's going to protect your quarterback. And C, you have an area of development. I think that's something that this regime really thrives on under Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. Getting guys in here and stressing the development. Okay, you're a great pass blocker. We need you to improve the run game. That's going to be something that I can motivate you on a daily basis. It's going to be a big task for Bobby Johnson. You're going to look at what that coaching staff was able to do in Indianapolis with that offensive line last year. It was impressive. And so you're wondering, can Bobby Johnson bring that over to Buffalo under Brian Daboll, who has experience coaching on the offensive line, spent some time relearning the offensive line with Dante Scarnecchia up in New England. It's an interesting tidbit that I got from Brandon Beane when I spoke to him back during the season, is that when things were going bad for Brian Daboll and he had 2 stints as offensive coordinators that were flops, he walked away from coaching for a little bit, went back and just became an assistant just to kind of be a fly on the wall, and spent a whole season picking Dante Scarnecchia's brain up in New England. And obviously he's made a lot of money for Nate Soldier and Trent Brown these last 2 off seasons. So you're hoping that Brian Daboll now is building just an environment here of learning and development. Hopefully that also works with Bobby Johnson. But I think across the board it's a great signing.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you go back a few seasons to when the Bills had Eric Wood. Eric Wood made life easier on the guard. So having a guy like Mitch Morse, that should make life easier for Wyatt Teller if the Bills go with Wyatt Teller at left guard in this season. And whoever they start at right guard, whether it be Spencer Long or a signing or a draft pick, just having someone that's established there in the middle that has a track record of success is going to help along the inside or the interior of that offensive line.
100%. I mean, it's good news, Ryan. This is we talked a lot about how bad this offensive line was last season. Deion Dawkins took quite a step back last year. He gave up 8 sacks allowed last year, which when I went back and looked at the numbers, I mean, that even popped a little bit for me. So you're going to see him probably refocused. You figure that they're going to hopefully go after one more player in free agency, and then the draft is wide open to just bring in the best possible fits at positions. You bring up a name like maybe Dalton Reisner from Kansas State, somebody we've talked about quite a bit, but the possibilities are there because you took this first step.
I agree completely. So, this was the first thing, or this is the biggest thing I think Bills fans wanted to see on day one of the legal tampering period was to get one of those big name centers, and mission accomplished for Brendan Bean.
Moving right along, the second signing, I think when it originally was announced, the signing of former Cincinnati Bengals tight end Tyler Kroft, I'm not so sure that there was an overwhelming sense of excitement over Tyler Kroft, but the more you kind of pick away the layers here at this signing, it's hard not to really like what Brandon Beane was able to do with this. First of all, it's a very good contract. You look at it, very front-loaded. It's a 3-year deal, around $18 million. But the Bills they're not on the line for much in 2020 and 2021. Mike Rodak from ESPN put out a nice tweet a few moments ago, kind of laying all of that out, the contract details. And I think that was the key to this. You wanted to go out and spend on one of the free tight ends that you thought could come in and help you right away, but you're not tied to him long term because that allows you now to go and draft somebody in a deep tight end draft and start developing them for the future.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe the Bills go out and get T.J. Hawkinson or Noah Fant or Irv Smith Jr. Those are the big three names you're going to hear over and over again leading up to the draft. And maybe then Tyler Kroft isn't needed as much in 2020, 2021. And like you said, Mike Rodak really broke down this contract. It's only 8.3 of the 18.75 million is guaranteed. Like you said, front-loaded, though, you can get rid of him fairly easily if he doesn't produce, if he's dealing with injuries, which was what happened last year. So, it's another nice job by Brendan Beane when you really see how the contract breaks down. It's a perfect example of not overreacting to the contract when you first see the numbers, because, again, NFL teams can manipulate those numbers and make them look a lot better than they really are when you first see how it comes out. But this is a guy that in 2017 had 7 touchdowns, had a nose for getting in the end zone, was rather productive with the Bengals. And I think he can come in and compete with Jason Kroom. They can kind of push one another, but they can also help a rookie that's going to be in that tight end room. But, by all estimations, you would think that the Bills are going to add another tight end here in this draft class.
Mm-hmm. And, you bring up those 7 touchdowns. I mean, Charles Clay in 4 seasons was able to put up 9 touchdowns. That's been that scoring aspect from that position has been missing in this offense for a few years now. And, I tweeted out 7 touchdowns would have led this team last year. And somebody else hit me up with, that would be a franchise record for a tight end. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, tight end position has been something that Buffalo has seemingly neglected throughout their history. You think of some of the big names from even the Super Bowl era, Pete Metzelaars, he's a name, but he didn't really have any, eye-popping stats. You had Keith McKellar, you had Jay Reamersma, obviously, later in the 1990s. They've had some people that have come in and done some things in terms of receptions, yards, touchdowns, blocking, but they've never really had that big name player that could come in that puts up a lot of touchdowns. And I'm not saying that Croft will be that guy, but the fact that this guy did have 7 touchdowns in 1 year, I think that's pretty encouraging for Bills fans.
Mm-hmm. I tweeted out after news broke that the Bills were signing Frank Gore as their first free agent signing of the tampering period, and I just thought, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, the 2 30-year-old running backs, and you're going to bring in another one. But the more I sat and thought about it, the more I thought, okay, what's at work here? Number one, you bring in a guy like a Frank Gore, a proven veteran guy that, is still motivated, 500 some odd yards away from, moving into 3rd place all time, passing Barry Sanders if he was able to do that. So he's still motivated. He's going to want to get his yards. Number 2, he's close with LaShawn McCoy, which is a twofold. 1, maybe keep LaShawn McCoy in check, and 2, motivate LaShawn McCoy because they're so close and they train together. And 3, it might allow you to, get rid of Chris Ivory, who was okay last year. I didn't really have any problems with how Chris Ivory played last year, especially in the passing game. I thought he was more effective in the passing game than McCoy for the most part. But it allows you to, potentially shed a lot of that money. I think it's almost $2 million the Bills would save if they get rid of Chris Ivory, and that's how much they're paying for 1 year of Frank Gore.
Yeah, it's essentially a wash if they decide to get rid of Chris Ivory, which I think will end up being the game plan there. You look at Gore; he had 12 consecutive seasons with over 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. That's pretty amazing when you really sit back and look at that. And that streak ended last year in Miami. So this is something that was the majority of his career. He was putting up a lot of rushing yards. Some seasons he was putting up a fair amount of receiving yards. Nothing too eye-popping, but he had a nice mix there, especially these last few years, to help him get over that 1,000-yard threshold. And now you bring him to Buffalo. He's a nice compliment in terms of his running style to LaShawn McCoy. He still is a hard runner, but despite his age, despite his workload, here's a guy that still looks like he has a lot of tread on the tires. He's going to help in the blocking game. He can catch the ball. So, like you said, the more you thought about it, the more you said, okay, this isn't a bad signing. It just kind of caught you off guard because everyone said, oh, yeah, the Bills are going to get younger at running back this year. And then they go out and sign a guy that's going to be 36 here in a few months.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we got the running back. They obviously took care of the offensive line and tight end. The one position they haven't addressed yet is wide receiver, and there's still a couple out there. A few have gone. Two of the slot guys went pretty early in Jamison Crowder and Adam Humphries, getting around $10 million a year, both of those guys. And then Devin Funchess with the eye-popping 1 year, $13 million deal with the Colts. Only 10 of it is guaranteed. But that was somebody that, Bills fans, I think, were almost fearful of Brandon Beane going back to the Carolina well and signing Devin Funchess, but he's off the board. But if we could, looking ahead to tomorrow and Wednesday, if there's one wide receiver at this point that you're just like, go all in, is it go all in and go sign a big long-term deal for a Tyrell Williams from the Los Angeles Chargers, or is it, maybe another option out there? What do you think the Bills should do at this point?
I think it is Tyrell Williams at this point. Here's a guy that says, I want to be a number one wide receiver. I want to prove what I can do. When I had the opportunity with the Chargers, I showed what I could do. But then Keenan Allen came back from an injury that next season, and his role then changed. He did produce when he was given the opportunity. I'll give him that. And if he truly does want to prove himself, well, what better place than Buffalo, where you automatically come in and you're slotted in as the number one wide receiver. It addresses a major need. It allows the Bills to possibly kind of sit back on this wide receiver draft class and maybe grab a guy in the middle rounds rather than have to get someone in round 1 or round 2. A nice compliment to Robert Foster. Zay Jones has a lot of talent, has a skill set that matches up nicely with Josh Allen. So if there's a wide receiver that you want to go after and you have the money, which the Bills do, I think it's Tyrell Williams.
I think Williams is a very intriguing option because there's so much of the unknown there, the size, the speed, the willingness to want to compete and earn that number one wide receiver status. But the price tag does worry me a little bit. I know the Bills do have that cap space to play with, but I just keep hearing Brandon Beane saying over and over again in my head that he wants to be judicious in the way that he spends that money, and it would be quite the gamble. Now, it might be worth it, might not. That's neither here nor there. But I think a safer option would be to go back to the well again. I using the same phrase, and go back and try to talk to John Brown, who showcased some real skills early on last season, paired with the strong arm quarterback of Joe Flacco in Baltimore. Things kind of fell off when Lamar Jackson came in, and then that also brings to the point, well, is that because he's a running quarterback? But I think Josh Allen is able to throw the ball a little bit more, do a little bit more in the passing game, and I think a versatile weapon like John Brown, which you can get at a very affordable deal. I really think that Brian Daboll could work wonders with Golden Tate. He's obviously a little bit older, probably going to command a 3-year deal and get $11 or $12 million a year, but that's a guy that's proven in this league to be able to make plays, get separation, and has demonstrated the versatility to be used in various spots in the formation. And I think that's what they've been selling over at One Bills Drive with Brian Dable running this offense, is he will find a way to get the ball in the playmakers' hands. And to me, on this free agent market, there's no better playmaker right now than Golden Tate.
Yeah, and there are still some names, and there's obviously a drop-off. But you have guys like Cole Beasley, another slot guy. You have Randall Cobb out there, Dante Moncrief, Philip Dorsett. There are still some players out there that, especially if they're looking for speed, some of those later names that I mentioned, could come in and contribute. Not saying they'd be a number one wide receiver in Buffalo, nor should they. But there are still some guys out there. Maybe Buffalo waits for the market to settle. Maybe Tyrell Williams is too much for them, and maybe that ends up being the same for John Brown, although I don't think he's going to get more than he did last year, especially, like you said, based on that fall-off that we saw when Lamar Jackson came in. So there are still plenty of names out there. I know that fans were probably sitting on the edge of their seat saying, okay, who's next, who's next, who's next? Well, they already worked out 3 deals today, at least, in agreement, obviously. So they've been fairly active. I think, tomorrow maybe there's another signing or two. But I think that they might wait for the second wave, so to speak, to come in if they can't get one of their top targets or top 2 targets at wide receiver. Same going for right tackle. We haven't heard much today about Darrell Williams or Juwan James. Who knows what's going on there, but if they miss on their top targets there too, maybe you wait for that second wave where the price comes down and you get a guy that you say, okay, this is still someone who is potentially better than Jordan Mills. This is still someone that maybe we don't have to draft an offensive tackle in round 1. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because they've already gone out, they've already addressed 3 needs here on day 1, depth at running back, possibly starting tight end, and then obviously the big move with Mitch Morse at center. So I'm intrigued to see what happens tomorrow as well.
And to see what happens, stick with us at NYup and Syracuse.com. We'll have you covered. He is Ryan Talbot. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan Talbot Bills. I am Matt Parrino. You can follow me as well at Matt Parrino on Twitter. We'll have you covered with everything that's going on this week as the Bills fill all these holes, and then we can really set our sights on this draft and sink our teeth in. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.